Thank you very much. So, dear participants, especially thank you to the ADB, Korean Presidential Committee on Northern Economic Cooperation, Korean Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy for organizing this conference, and thank you for the opportunity to take a speech here in the international conference. So, dear participants, first of all, I would like to start my speech from a little about our history of how the Asian Supergrid initiative has started. So I think after the Fukushima incident in Japan, there was raised many questions and problems how to supply, how to secure and sustainable supply of the electricity. In this case, so many countries started to look for alternative energy generation and other secure and environment-friendly sustainable energy sources. So thus involved in renewable energy sources, and SoftBank proposal was to use vast of renewable energy sources of Mongolia. Simultaneously, Energy Charter was looking at the possibilities of Desertec and Gobitec, which led to the Asia Supergrid. Also, the Paris Agreement progressed. Mongolia has also taken the responsibility to decrease CO2 emissions. As you all know, that Mongolia is the rich with the renewable energy resources. So Mongolia has unique possibilities for solar energy resources, especially the Gobi region is more efficient, but also the Gobi region has abundant resources of the wind energy. So as you can see on the map, the Altai Mountains create the wind corridor that leads the Gobi region, and the ranging capacity of the wind resources up to 7,000 terawatt years. That's the unique possibility to create the renewable energy in the Mongolia. So a little about the energy policy and the environment. In terms of this, we have amended and approved several documents on 2007 and 2015, among other State Grid on Energy Policy and Renewable Energy Law. State policy on the energy covers energy efficiency, energy security, and environmental issues. Also, as you can see on the slide, our aim is to improve regional cooperation. But also, the documents indicated how to increase the share of the renewable energy. So, in Mongolia, we have reached of the renewable energy that the target goal is to achieve the 20% by the 2023 generation mix by the renewable energy. That's the target goal. This aim was coupled with the decision of the Paris Agreement, and our government is now taking the action to push the aim is global warming, aims to hold 2 degrees Celsius. So main achievements of the renewable energy law is feed-in tariff, which is 15 to 17 cents per kilowatt hours for solars, and 8 to 9.5 cents per kilowatt hours for wind energy. So this chart is the state policy also, the state policy on energy. As I said, it covers the energy efficiency, environment, and security issues. The improvement of the regional cooperation is key issues of the state policy. That's why we are talking about the Asia Supergrid. The main goal is how to use renewable energy sources of Mongolia and how to supply it to the region. On this map, you can see where we have already made our surveys and measurements of the wind and solar potentials. As you may say, we have progressed very well within the last 3 years after amendment of the renewable energy laws. Almost more than 30 special licenses were provided for solar and wind and hydro projects, ranging capacities around 950 megawatt. So 950 megawatt is only from wind and solar. So main motivation of the development of such surveys are feed-in tariff, which I mentioned above. So Mongolia's installed capacity is too small. It's around 1 gigawatt. But our survey has shown that we have abundant resources of renewable energy. But if we deploy it, we cannot accommodate all capacity to the domestic grid. Also, we need to develop more hydropower plants which can operate grid stably and secure. So we need to open a market opportunity to export renewable energy in the region. This is also stated on the study conducted by the Energy Charter and Asia Supergrid. Therefore, we have initiated and requested ADB to this action to create strategy on the Northeast Asian interconnections. So we thank you to the ADB for their willingness to cooperate and look at the opportunity to each country to contribute to the Asia Supergrid. Also, partially the countries that co-finance these projects. Also, thanks to those countries which enabled their experts to work on this project from Korea, Japan, China, and Russia. So we strongly hope that selected EDF company and their experts will come and with results, comprehensive business models, and beneficial for all the countries in the regions. So in the Northeast, in the region, we have several meetings on Northeast Asia interconnection possibilities. Conferences on Shanghai, Ulaanbaatar, and Beijing in Russia have shown that on the high level of the politicians and non-governmental organizations has been very positive on the interconnections. It's fulfilling the vision of the Belt and Road initiatives of China and Asia Supergrid initiative of the Russia. So now it needs to establish in-depth discussion on the intergovernmental levels, as we held on the workshop in Ulaanbaatar in 2015. The response from the research institutes and several governmental institutions were surprisingly high and positive on these matters. However, we need to have more dialogues on energy connectivity among the government level decision makers. If the dialogue continues, we need to establish Asia Supergrid Research Institute to continue on the research on the Asia Supergrid. We would like to request among the participating countries, since our energy demand will only grow in the near future. So we need to take our non-governmental organizations on never level on cooperation. There could be elaborate with the Asia Supergrid Research Institute. In last September, in the Russian Far East, there was held the economic forum. In this economic forum, 4 leaders of the Northeast Asian countries, Mongolia, Russia, Japan, and South Korea, meets and discussed various about the Northeast Asian possibility. So the leaders will be very positive on these energy interconnections. That's why the Mongolia is very much looking for open the market in Northeast Asian countries' energy interconnection. So sharing success stories such as from Scandinavian countries, as the business model from some European countries, like the Vattenfall Germany, selling and buying from international markets could lead our Asia supergrid to a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chimedorji. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
여기 계신 대부분
So most of the audience are Korean, so I will change my language. So next presentation will be given by Mr. Xue Zhao, the Chief Representative of the Japan Representative Office, the GEICO. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zhao Shouhe from GEICO Japan Representative Office. Today, I'm very honored to be here to share with you some information about Belt and Road Initiative and the China-Korea-Japan Power Grid Interconnection. Let's start with the Belt and Road Initiative. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, now together referred to as the Belt and Road Initiative. The initiative integrates the historical symbolism of the ancient Silk Road with the new requirements of today. The initiative attracted considerable attention from the international community. In the 4 years since the initiative was proposed, more than 100 countries and international institutions have made active responses, and more than 70 of them have signed bilateral cooperation agreements with China. The initiative's goal is to maintain an open world economic system to achieve diversified, independent, balanced, and sustainable development, to advance regional cooperation, to strengthen communications between civilizations, and to safeguard world peace and stability. There are 5 priorities in the initiatives: policy coordination, facility connectivity, unpeded trade, financial integration, and people-to-people bond. Among the 5 priorities, facility connectivity is the most important one, and also the electric power connection is one of the most important facilities to be connected. Next, let's move on to the Northeast Asia interconnection. Actually, the energy distribution in Northeast Asia region is uneven. Mongolia, Russia's eastern region, West China has abundant energy resources, while Japan, Korea, and East China are in short supply. The direction of electricity flow in Northeast Asia should be from west to the east and from the north to the south. China has been actively resolve the energy imbalance issue through the ultra-high voltage transmission projects. Northeast Asia grid interconnection might be an important way to address Japan and Korea's energy issues. Actually, as you all know, that several organizations have conducted studies on the Northeast Asia grid interconnection in order to meet demand growth, maintain energy supply security, promote renewable energy, and achieve a fair electricity price. In order to make this concept to reality, in 2016, State Grid Corporation of China, SGCC, and Capital, SoftBank, and Russian Rossity signed an MOU to study the feasibility study of the Northeast Asia interconnection. We can't build Northeast Asia energy interconnection at one stroke. Upon a rough assessment, we could easily find that the south section of the interconnection, that is from Mongolia to China to Korea and Japan, has more favorable conditions than the north one. So we selected the Mongolia, China, Korea, Japan power grid interconnection as the first phase of Northeast Asia interconnection. This interconnection could transmit renewable energy from Mongolia to China to Japan, and finally to Japan. Okay, State Grid Corporation has finished the pre-feasibility study on Mongolian-China UHVDC transmission line. In order to conduct a pre-feasibility study on China-Korea-Japan interconnection, a joint working group and a joint technical group was established by State Grid, Capital, SoftBank in 2016. And after 10 months of meticulous work and 5 working group meetings, the pre-feasibility study was completed in March this year. The study mainly includes analysis of China, Korea, Japan's power system and energy demand supply forecast, comparison and evaluation of different technical schemes as to transmission capacity, voltage level, and DC technology, etc., and assessment of impact of power grid stability in the countries involved, and of course the cost estimation. So the main research results are the transmission line start from Weihai, China, through DC submarine line to Incheon, Korea, connected to the Korea AC grid. Then from Gongsun, Korea, through DC transmission line to Matsui, Japan, or Lainan, Japan. Finally connected to the Japan AC network. So the China-Korea section is 360 kilometers long, and the Korea-Japan section is 460 kilometers long to Matsui, and 770 kilometers long to Lainan. So transmission technology is used, DC technology as SLCC or VSC. The voltage level is plus minus 500 kV. The transmission capacity, 2 gigawatt. The result shows that technically, the interconnection is feasible. And commercially, the rough idea is that the overall cost from the China to Japan, the transmission line cost is vary between $4 billion to $6 billion, depending on the technical schemes. And the price of the electricity transmitted to the landing point in Japan is lower than that of the local wholesale electricity market. So that is to say, commercially, it's also feasible. So that's the pre-feasibility study. And next stage, we will continue to the detailed feasibility study. In the feasibility study stage, on top of the further detailed study in the technical and the cost perspective, the feasibility study will address a business model analysis, regulatory work framework, risk assessment, and of course, the seabed survey, etc. The last but not least, it is very important to secure the government and public support to realize the Northeast Asia interconnection. So next stage, all the parties will continue to communicate with their respective government to get support. And hopefully, we can put this interconnection project into the intergovernmental framework cooperation. So in that case, that we can lay a solid foundation to the realization of the Northeast Asia interconnection. And also, we hope we can put this interconnection as the first successful pilot project under the Belt Road Initiative in the Northeast Asia region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhao. 다음은 한국전력
Next presenter will be Mr. Won Young-jin, the Vice President of KEPCO. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
한전의 경인건설본부장을 맡고 있는
Hello, I'm Won Young-jin, the Vice President of KEPCO. So we are in charge of the building of the transmission, and maybe you're curious why I am talking about this issue here, but well, I have been in charge of this for about 4 or 5 years, so I can give you brief information. So the title of my presentation is KEPCO's Progress and Future of NEA Supergrid. So I will share with you what we have done as well as the challenges that we must meet in the future.
말씀드릴 순서는 이제
This is the contents of my presentation, background and the current status, and the challenges. And I believe that rather than the title, I think you are looking at the Kim Yeona aspect, or Yuna Kim, the figure skater of Korea.
운반에서 이렇게 플레이하는 건 볼 수 없겠지만
We will not see her doing the figure skating during the Pyeongchang Olympics, but she's the ambassador, so you can come and meet her.
본 그림은 전력
And
수요와
then this slide explains about the renewable energy resources and demand around the world, and especially when you focus on Asian region, you can see that the solar and wind sources are concentrated in the areas which do not have much demand.
그다지 그 풍부한 에너지 자원이 없다는
And then in the other areas which require a lot of energy demand do not have such sources. So we can say that the supply and demand when it comes to the renewable energy are a little bit different. And then what we need to focus also is
오른쪽
that
상단에 있는 일본하고 한국보다
the map on the right, the upper right, if you look at Japan and Korea, there is a high demand, but the location, because of the location, the supergrid has not been connected yet.
동북아시아 상황만 말고
So not only the Northeast Asia, let's look at the European region.
북쪽하고 남쪽 간의
In the
어떤
past,
전력 부족의 문제를 해소하기 위해서
in order to resolve the issue regarding the interconnection between the north and south,
국제간 연계는 동북아시아에서 생각하는 것만큼 그렇게 어려운 과제가 아니었고
well, the international or the interconnection between the countries was not that difficult as we are seeing in Northeast Asian region. And then by connecting the grid, they could actually improve the confidence in that system. And as of now, they have overcome the situation.
풍력 자원과 지중해 연안의
And then they are now
태양 자원을 모두 이용해가지고
connecting the wind power available on the North Sea and then the solar power available on the Mediterranean Sea, and then they are now connecting closer.
근간망을 이루는 그러한 상황으로 많이 발전해 있고
So they are developing further to utilize it as a foundation, and then the transaction between countries is getting better.
동북아 쪽으로 다시 눈을 돌리게
So let's
되면
come back to the Northeast Asia.
주로 이제 몽골 쪽이라든가
Let's look at Mongolia, China, and Russia first.
자연은 재생 자원은 풍부합니다.
They have rich renewable resources, but as presented by the Chinese speaker, the demand is concentrated on south, like Japan and Korea and China.
그다음에 더더군다나
And then in addition to
옆으로 더 이렇게
that,
분포된 지역이기 때문에
the areas are really vast
전력부와의
horizontally.
캐리치를 이루는 시간에 약간의 차이가
So
존재하고 있습니다.
there is a time gap
더더군다나
between
현재
the
문제가
supplying
되는
and demanding.
이 미세먼지라고 부르는 것들이
And then the
어디서
fine
발원이
dust
되고
is
있고
also problematic in this
발생 원인은
region.
무엇인가?
So the source of
어떻게
the
전파되어 가고 있는가?
fine dust and then the purpose of, the reason why we have fine dust, these are now being analyzed and then we need to find the ways to resolve this issue further.
경제적인 차원에서 본다고
And then
치면
from the economic
전기의
perspective,
가치를 어떻게 하면 더 높여서
how can we improve
그런 차원을
the value of electric power is also another issue. And then from the environmental
친환경적인
perspective,
자원을 어떻게 하면
how
잘
to
이용할 수
utilize
있을까?
eco-friendly
그런 차원이 있을
resources
것이고,
will be another
그다음에
issue.
전력망의 신뢰도 문제를
And then
보게 되면
reliability
국가 간에
in
서로
the
전력을
power
예비율을
grid.
공유함으로써
How
아까
can we
이제
share the
송진영
reserve together?
의원님께서
So that is another
말씀하셨는데요.
issue. And then MP Song has also mentioned this during his presentation. If we can share the energy reserve together, then we can improve the efficiency.
또한 이에 따라서 당연히
And of course,
전력 거래에 대한 새로운 개념들이 더
the
확대될 것으로 보여집니다.
electricity transaction will have a new concept.
그다음 사진을 보게 되면은
So if you look at the next slide,
이 사진에서는
in this
세계
slide, you can see
대부분의 지역, 5대양 6대주 대부분의 지역이 전부 다
the status
통전망은
of
연계가 되어 있습니다.
the world, and then the there is a weak or strong connection,
그런데
one of the
전체
two
인구의
across the
20%,
world, but 20%
전 세계
of the world
약 20%,
population, and then 20%
전 세계
of the
교역량의
world
또
GDP, and then 20% of the
모든
world
분리를 차지하는
trade.
동북아시아 지역만
So 1/5
유일하게
of everything of the
그중에서도
world
가장 문제가 되는 게
is
한국하고
in
일본만 연결이
Asia,
되어 있다는
but
겁니다.
Korea and Japan
다른
have not
대륙에서는
been connected.
일상적인 송전망 연계가
So
유호
the
지역에서만은
connection
안 돼
has
있고,
become very
어떤
ordinary in
역사적인
other
것이나
countries,
아니면
if I may
전통적인
say,
것이나 이런
but
문화적인 것을 봤을
it's
때
not existing between
한국하고
Korea and
일본하고
Japan. That's what I
중국
want
간의
to
연계가
highlight.
매우 강합니다. 문화적인 동질성이나 어떤 식품에 대한 동질성이나
So we
그럼에도
feel
불구하고
very
에너지만은
close to each other.
유일하게
However, when it comes to
잘
energy,
활용되지 못하는
it has
그러한
not
지역이
been fully
되겠습니다.
utilized in this region.
이 그림은 앞에
And
중국에서
this
발표한 자료에
slide
나와 있습니다.
was
앞으로 나올
shown
그
in previous
자료들은
presentation as
대부분
well.
같은 그 사진
You will
내지는
see very similar
조금씩은
photos or similar
그런 그 자료들이 계속 나오는데요.
images
이유는 간단합니다.
repeatedly in this
에너지에 대한
forum.
것은
And then there is
우리가
one
이
reason
러시아나
to explain
몽골이나
about this.
중국이나 한국이나 일본이나 같은 꿈을 꾸고 있다는 겁니다.
It's because we have all same dream, shared dream together in 5 countries: Korea, Japan, China, Russia, and Mongolia. So we have the same dream. And then MP Song also said if we dream together, we can realize it earlier. So I hope that we will see this realization earlier than ever.
슈퍼그리드에 대한 컨셉이 되겠는데요.
So this slide explains about KEPCO's vision of the NEA supergrid. It is not that
오른쪽에 있는
significantly different, but if you look at the map on the right, you can see the two different lines.
점선으로 되어 있는 부분들은
So if
조금은
you
사이버한
see
개념으로
that the
망에
dotted
투입하고
line
그 망에 물리적으로 어떤 송전망을 건설하는 것이 아니라
is rather than
기존 송전망을
establishing the
활용한다는 그런 개념으로
physical
보면 될 것이고,
physical
실선으로 되어 있는
network, we are going to use
부분들은
the
대체적으로
existing
많은 보강이
network.
필요하구나.
And then
그런
on the
부분으로
other
나누어서
hand, when you look
볼
at
수가
the
있겠습니다.
solid line, we must establish the physical networks.
이 사진도 아까 뭐 잠깐 보였던 사진입니다.
I think you have
왼쪽
already
사진은요.
seen this
이게
picture
사업자 측의
before.
생각들인데
So let's look at
손정현하고 그다음에
what the leaders think.
SGC 소신문 한전의 조한익 사장
So you can
그다음에
see the
SGCC
SGCC and KEPCO and SoftBank and Rosati signed an MOU on joint promotion of power grid interconnection
저희 사업자들은
in 2016. And it shows that the leaders have the same dream, but
뒤에 빠져 있는 게 있었습니다.
there was one thing that we were
또다시
missing.
사업자만 있는데 그 옆에 오른쪽 사진을
We
보게
have
되면은
business leaders who want to take the initiative, but let's look at the photo on the right. We can see Chairman Song.
같이 보이는데 이것이 저희가 시사하는 바가
and
굉장히
Mr.
크다고
Son as well. And I think this photo
사업자
shows
측에서는
a lot
많은
of
준비를
meeting.
해왔었습니다.
So business leaders have
MOU를
prepared a
체결하고
lot
그다음에
by
공동으로
signing an
연구조사를
MOU
실시하고
and by conducting
사업자들은
research and
그렇게
development
하지만
together.
그다음
So it
단계로
has been
올라가지
done
못한
in the business
상황에서
area, but we could not
한국의
take a
정권이
further
우리를
step
바꾼 그러한
to
이유도
actually
있겠지만서도
promote this grid in this region.
정치가 쪽에서 먼저 손을 내밀었다는 겁니다.
But now we have
이게
the
사업을 하는 사람들이
political
가장 오랫동안
willingness.
열망해 오던
That
것이
was the
지금 이
something
찬스,
that we were
이거
waiting
이게
for
지난
so
9월
long.
달에
So I believe
그
that this is a really
사진인데요.
great chance for
요
us.
사건을 통해
This
가지고
photo was
정치권으로
taken in
올라설
last
수 있는
September.
그런
So
길을 열었다는
we
게
have
굉장히
opened a new way
도발적인,
by getting support
도전적인
from the political
그런
circle. So I
이벤트라고
believe that
보고
this is a really
이
challenging
이벤트에
event.
의해서 이제 그다음에 조금
So thanks to
더
this
큰
event,
그런 이제
we could make
전략이
further
나왔죠.
progress.
아시다시피
So as you can
사진들은
see,
옆에 계신 분은 이제 푸틴
on the
대통령하고
left, President Putin and
홍의원이시고
Chairman Song are there. And then on the right, we have our President Moon Jae-in.
요 동방 경제 포럼을 통해 가지고
So in the Eastern
결국은
Economic Forum,
대한민국에서도 최고 책임자급의
we could share our vision regarding the Asia super grid by our leader of the country.
공포를 하시면서 또 한 말씀을 또
And he
하셨습니다.
added one comment as well.
후손들에게 물려줄 유산 중에 제일 쓸만한 게 무엇이냐?
So what is the legacy, the greatest legacy that we can give to our next generation? That is energy, and then that is
이런
energy
식의
grid,
발언이
and then
나오게
that is
되기까지는
super
여기 계신
grid.
그 학교에서 오신 분들도 계시고
So we
그다음에
have some
산업계에서 오신
participants
분들도
from the
계시고,
industry and academia
그다음에
here today,
언론에서 오신 분들도
as
계시고,
well as
많은
media.
분들이 계셨지만
And then
이분들의 협조가
I believe that thanks to
결국은
your support and
대한민국이라는
cooperation
사회에서도
in
최고
the
수반에게까지
Korean
말이
society,
전달되었고,
we
그로
have
인해서
delivered our
공포가
message
됐다는
to
요
our
사실이
leader of the
굉장히
country, and then
중요하다고
it was
생각하고 있습니다.
proposed by him in this forum. So it is really meaningful.
그다음에는 이제 저희가 막 부딪히고 있는
And
실질적인
now
문제에
let's
대해서
look
좀
at the
말씀을
challenges
드리겠습니다.
for the future.
요 테이블은
So this table was made by the European super grid. And then let's look at the bold texts. So they are in the ranks. And then the biggest risk factor is related to policy. And then the second one is financial. And then third one is planning and consenting. And then the fourth one, political.
그 밑에 보면은
And then if you look at the chart,
뭐 인프라라든가
following chart ranking, they are infrastructure, operational, and technical. So they are included in the ranks, but they are not that important compared to the others. What does it mean? When it comes to making the Asia super grid, there is no technical issue. Even if we do have a technical issue, we can resolve it together. But what is important here is that, as I mentioned before,
파이낸셜에 대한 문제가 일부에서는 언급이 되었습니다.
financial was mentioned,
파이낸셜 문제로 풀 수 있는 그런 비즈니스
but we have,
정책 내지는
so when it comes to the business model to resolve this financial issue, well, the answer will come from the policy. And if we can get support from the political circle, the financial and business model will be improved. So if the business model improves, well, it will be a chance for the business leaders to earn more profit, so they are not going to miss it.
그다음에 이제 이 규제에 대한 문제.
And then now let's talk about the regulation.
아까 그 사진에서 보았듯이
As you saw from the photos before, the business leaders
그런 준비를 해왔습니다.
have prepared for this new business from the past.
이 정부 차원의 대화로 올라가야
And then
될 시기가
it is
됐고
now time for us to move to the political discussion. And then it was also mentioned by our speaker from Mongolia.
상호 간의 역학관계.
So the relationship and cooperation between the public and private sectors have become more important. What do we need here to make the Asia super grid is that
슈퍼그리드를 진행하기 위한 그런 어그리멘트를 맺는 것이
is
가장
the
중요합니다.
signing of the agreement to establish the Asia super grid. Only when we have this agreement,
이런 것들을 줄일 수 있는
we can
방법이
reduce the political risks.
그다음에 사업자들에게는
And then for the business
돈을 내주는
leaders,
스테이크홀더들에게는
the stakeholders who will pay for this project,
염려를 줄여주는
we
그런
can get rid of the instability or unconfidence or unreliability in this project. So we need a joint development agreement to promote this project further. So it is time to do so. So this is my last slide.
저희가 협력을 해야 되는 부분들은
So we must cooperate basically based on the consensus. As I explained earlier, Korea and Japan are the only countries that have not connected the grid yet. However,
연계에서도 가장
Korea and Japan are very passive when it comes to the interconnection related cooperation. But I hope that we will be more active, and it will be possible by coming up with the alternatives. And I believe that we need a lot of support from the political leaders.
파워 트레이딩 문제 이런 것도 사실
So power trading mechanism and taxation are related to regulations. So if we can resolve the big picture, then I believe that we will be able to reach this goal, just like the European case. And then when it comes to the business model, we need a nationwide consensus. And if we can establish the regulatory framework, I believe that the business leaders will be able to promote the models further.
2018년도에 내년도 2월에
In February 2018, we will have Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in Korea. And then in Tokyo, there will be Summer Olympics in 2020. So by the time that we have 2 Olympics in Asian region, I hope that the 5 countries, Korea, Japan, Russia, Mongolia, and China, will be able to suggest the new bridge for the new energy. And I believe that if we do so, we will be able to give chances to our next generation for the clean energy. Thank you very much.
네, 본부장님 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Moving on, CEO Miwa Shigeshi will give us presentation.
Mr. Shigeki Miwa. 예, okay. The floor is yours. 네, 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Please welcome the speaker with a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon. My name is Shigeki Miwa from SoftBank and SB Energy, Japan. My presentation is, if I can share some latest situation and what we are thinking from private company perspective, I'm more than happy. So from SoftBank perspective, SoftBank is telecommunication company, but why we entered this energy market, that everything started from 2011, March 11, the Great East Japan earthquake and Fukushima accident. And after that, SoftBank intensively entered this energy market and initiated a lot of business. As of today in Japan, at 38 sites, accumulating to 546 megawatt renewable energy. Very small, comparing to global standard, this is very small, but even this number, SoftBank is already one of the largest renewable energy developers in Japan. And in Mongolia, plenty of renewable energy resources, and we have obtained usage right of 326,000 hectares. This is 5 times of the size of Seoul City, 5 times of Seoul City. And we just recently started the first project, but the huge potentiality for SoftBank, together with Mongolian local partners, to start. And actually, this month, it's at the Gobi Desert for the first time. I'm very proud of this, but for the first time in the Gobi Desert, we have commenced the operation of 50 megawatt. And after that, we have already started the desktop study of 2 gigawatt wind. at the same site, Gobi Desert. In addition, last year, SoftBank and KEPCO and Newcom. Newcom is Mongolian telecom operator, owner of the telecom operator. Those three companies discussed and agreed to jointly consider what we can do together to develop renewable energies in Mongolia. After that, recently, already SoftBank has already started 350 megawatt solar in India and 400 megawatt solar again. We are about to start the construction, okay? Now, already somebody touched on this number. I think this is very important message. And today, at the speech, Mr. Ono of Renewable Energy Institute, he said, now that renewable energy is an economic choice, it's not policy or it's not social good stuff. No, it's economic choice. So everybody knows Abu Dhabi, 2.4 cents. Accurately saying 2.4 is surface price. In summertime season in Abu Dhabi, there is the summertime price escalation clause. So in essence, 2.4 should be interpreted as 2.9. But it doesn't matter. 2.4, 2.9, same. It is very much competitive, right? This is a price to be committed for future 25 years. After that, in Saudi Arabia, in this month, the 300 megawatt solar tender, it was announced and it was bidded, and the outcome has been announced. 1.78 cents per kilowatt hour for future 25 years. Again, this is not accurately explained by Saudi Arabia government, but it is said 2% annual escalation clause is included. So we should understand 1.78 is surface price, starting price, and for future 25 years, 2% annual escalation can be applied. But the essential point is same. The 1.78 by 2% escalation, what price do you think at the end of 25 years? It's just 2.8, okay? 1.78 today, after 25 years, it comes to 2.8. And the 25 years average price is 2.28. So again, this is another example of why renewable energy is now the economic choice. Oh, this is just a reference. This is not renewable energy, but clean energy. In that sense, SoftBank recently, 3 years ago, started a fuel cell business. And just for your reference, for Korean people's reference, we SoftBank recently started the business of fuel cell in Korea. So the SoftBank vision is everybody share, this vision so long as people here is concerned. But we think nobody can stop this macro trend from fossil fuels to renewables. Then Asia supergrid. Again, this is so popular picture, but one important point. Think about left-hand side, Mr. Son, chairman, founder, SoftBank. Others, they are all government-owned companies, right? You have to think about the meaning of this. SoftBank is purely private company, but State Grid, SGCC, Chinese government-owned company. And KEPCO, of course, I think it is 51% or majority percent is owned by Korean government. And Rosseti, Russia Grid, they are also owned by Russian government. Only Japan participant is a private company. This is telling something, and this is the reason why Japan cannot progress quickly. I will explain about it once again later. And this is a concept vision supergrid. Once again, this picture is famous, but one point which I have to attract everybody's attention, that is not this picture, but the number, 2 gigawatt. This is so important part, right? If I tell SoftBank is trying to connect Asian countries by HVDC, then most of the people says, how about security? How about security? What's a nonsense question from my perspective? Because our project is just talking about 2 gigawatt, right? 2 gigawatt means what? It's very, very small capacity, right? It's very symbolically, it is important. Symbolically, it is important, but we have to emphasize this first project together with KEPCO and SGCC and Russian grid. We are trying to make it happen at the size of 2 gigawatt. Korea, 250 gigawatt country. Japan, 250 gigawatt country. Korea, about 150 gigawatt. China, about 1,500 gigawatt countries, right? 2 gigawatt. So when you next see this kind of a picture, you have to emphasize what's the size of the project, 2 gigawatt. Nobody can worry about security. If we need to worry about security, please ask everybody to worry about internet, right? Internet, people can do whatever they want to do if they try to do something bad, right? That's the point. So the conclusion is technically feasible, economically makes sense, but the point is the politically regulation laws, at this point, we have to seriously think about. Except for Japan, everybody, the top leaders, support this concept. But only Japan, they seems to be reluctant. But I have to explain quickly why Japan. The answer is coming from the nature of Japanese electric market. 10 vertically integrated power companies and electricity difference between east side and west side, okay? And also the liberalization of Japanese electricity market is now ongoing. So the Asian supergrid is same as the liberalization of Japanese economy, Japanese power market. That's why politicians and the bureaucrats have to carefully think about how to implement Asian supergrid, energy interconnection, energy import and export, because it is directly relating to how we should liberalize Japanese electricity market. That's why everybody is so slow and careful. And one more point is, this is a bit sensitive, but the Japanese local power companies is very important in terms of election, right? That's the main reason why it takes time. So Japanese liberalization of Japanese electricity market is ongoing. So in parallel to this, I think we should not stop, just keep going, keep saying, doing. By doing that, at the end we can make it happen. And finally, I wanted to emphasize this picture once again. Today here, everybody is talking about Asian supergrid from the perspective of energy or renewable energy. But from SoftBank perspective, honestly speaking, the most important strategy, most important concept why SoftBank is so interested in this Asian supergrid is this. What I want to say is, everybody says today, now is the days of internet of things. No, that's not our opinion. Think about human being's body. Without blood circulatory system, how we can think, how we can imagine, how we can create something, right? That's why without blood circulatory system, no internet business, no new business, which means by connecting our energy grid globally and in Northeast Asia, this will create the new business and it will redefine the new form of future business. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miwa. 다음은 우리들의 미래 대표 김상엽 대표님.
So next presentation will be given by Chairperson Kim Sang-hyuk of Coalition for Our Common Future. We are a little bit behind the schedule, so please keep your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a great gathering and I thank you all the people who prepared for this wonderful event, and I thank you all the people who are joining us. And my special thanks goes to REI, Renewable Energy Institute, ADB, and Research Institute of Energy, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, and especially the Northern Economic Cooperation Committee. And I'm very much grateful for the wonderful, great initiative taken by Chairman Song Young-gil, who is opening the future with audacity. Well, I have many things to say, but all the speakers so far have spoken what I wanted to say. So I'm here to wrap up, sum up key things for the success of the East Asia Supergrid. I come up with 5 things to do. First, we need to build up sense of collective destiny. Yes, it is true that China, Japan, Korea share many things in common. They understand Chinese character, they eat rice, but it is also undeniable that we, the 3 countries, have some different views over the history of the past, territory, and some ideological issues. But facing the climate change, the biggest challenge of our time is making things different, because it is affecting our entire civilization, and thus, I believe climate change can increase the sense of us among 3 countries and beyond, and build up sense of collective destiny. That is the cornerstone to deepen our collaboration. Well, yeah, looking back the past of EU, it was France and UK to start it. That kind of cooperation which contributed to the expansion of EU. They started with coal and steel. They found common interest in common use, common development of coal and use. Now climate change can play the role, and it can be much, much bigger. Number 2, we need to stick to the Paris Agreement. Another name of Paris Agreement on climate change is Agreement on Low Carbon Energy or Green Energy. Well, as Director Won said, China, Japan, Korea amount roughly 20% of world population, 24% of GDP of the world. But when it comes to power consumption, almost 30%. And when it comes to CO2 emission, almost 35%, which means we have a lot of space for improvement and cooperation. And if you look into the details of the Paris Agreement, you will find Article 6, which is dealing cooperative approach. There you can find ITMO keyword. ITMO means internationally transferred mitigation outcome, which means if we do something green, like ASG starting from Mongolia, those 3 countries can get the credit for the things they do with collaborative way. We are making that kind of rule book for this year, and it will be finalized by next year. So new agreement on climate change and energy will help us to deepen our collaboration. So let us stick to Paris Agreement. It is sorrowful that Mr. Trump denies the climate change, but it would be not good for the US to withdraw from this agreement. Let us prove it. Number 3, do what we can do first. Do what can be doable first. As Myoa-san demonstrated quite well, we have always agreed, at least at company level, the first line of ASG, starting from Mongolia through China, Korea and Japan turns out to be technologically perfect. Okay, maybe not perfect. Okay, and it is making economic sense with only 2 gigawatt, and it is with renewables. It is wonderful. Let us do that first. Let us do what we can do first. And maybe in the end, it can create very attractive environment, maybe to invite North Korea in the end. Number 4, start intergovernmental dialogue right now. It is time for the governments among the nations to do something to support these projects. It is time for the government to make agreement to make this important interconnection of power grids among nations reliable, safe, and sustainable. It is quite strange for the big economy like this not to have interconnected power grid. So it's time for the government to do some work. Politics should prove its reasonable being, I believe. And we hear many great encouraging words from the leaders. President Xi Jinping revealed his great vision for global energy interconnection. President Putin of Russia welcomed it by proposing to launch intergovernmental panel for this. And recently, President Moon Jae-in of Korea established Presidential Committee for Northern Economic Cooperation to proceed this matter in a constructive way. And I'd like to hear some clear voice from the Japanese government. It is win and win project. I have never found a project like this, which promises this kind of synergic impact. And maybe we need to get some favorable support from the US, because the geopolitics in East Asia involves quadrangle element, not just China, Japan, Russia, Korea, but also US. We may need friendly support from the US. And also, we also get some support from the international organizations. Yeah, ADB is here with us. And there are 2 important international organizations here in Korea, Global Green Growth Institute and Green Climate Fund. And China has very big international organization, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. They can work together in opening up greener world together, supporting this important project. Finally, let the entrepreneurship prevail. As Miwa-san said, this is not just about interconnecting power grid. This is about the forthcoming 4th industrial revolution. It is about energy storage system. It is about smart grid. It is about high voltage direct current transmission line. It is also about big data. Yes, it is about grid of things to make IoT, Internet of Things, more concrete and visible. So let the entrepreneurship and innovation move the world in the end. I have a dream. In the end, my electric and full autonomous car will take me to Ulaanbaatar, through Tianjin, and around cities, hopefully Pyongyang, maybe. As Chairman said this morning, if we dream together, then the dream will come true. So let's get it done. Thank you.
다음은 고려대학교 장길수 교수님의 발표가 Professor Chang Gil-soo of Korea University will give us presentation. Please welcome the professor with a warm round of applause.
예, 반갑습니다. 고려대학교 장길수입니다.
Good afternoon. I'm Chang Gil-soo from Korea University. Let me be very brief in my presentation. Let me speak in 5 minutes in Korean.
아까 기조연설에서도 뭐 언급됐듯이
As mentioned by the keynote speaker, in Korea, with the new government taking effect, the new government is pursuing energy transition or energy transformation policy. What's most important in this transition is that by the year 2030, in terms of energy, the proportion of renewable energy sources will be increased to 20%. And converting into installed capacity, as you can see in the chart, PV accounts for 33%. 33 gigawatts will be required. As you can see here, PV and wind combined proportion is around 50%.
그렇게 되면 사실상 그 변동성 전원이 50기가와트의 설비 용량을 가지고
So 50 gigawatts of power will be supplied to Korea, to Korea's grid.
그래서 이러한 정책의 그 실제 이제 그 시행이 되고
So if this policy is implemented and when it comes to PV, do we have a space to implement so many devices? We have that issues. But on the consumption that we can implement all these PV devices, as mentioned several times so far, we have isolated power system in Korea.
이 독립되어 있는 전력 계통 하에서
So we have isolated or independent power system. So under this condition, if we want to utilize 50 gigawatts of variable sources, and the load is around 105 gigawatts, so how can we meet 100.5 gigawatts of demand with these 50 gigawatts variable sources? We need to meet these figures to make the energy transition policy feasible. So there is a variability in supply and demand will change, of course. So we need to strike a balance between supply and demand. So we need to have a large balancing power, as everyone knows in this room. And balancing power we can think about at the moment, as you can see in this slide. We have reserve issue. We need to secure fast power reserve. And power system itself needs to be flexible. So we can secure the energy we want with this power reserve and system flexibility. We can pursue energy storage. And I mentioned before that there is a demand variance, but we can pursue demand response. So whenever we need, we can control even demand for balancing power. But if balancing power is insufficient, we have no choice but to reduce or curtail renewable energy generation. So we need to minimize renewable energy curtailment and optimize the use of renewable energy. We need to have a big assumption once again. As you can see in the last line, we need to pursue power system interconnection. In many countries, Germany, Denmark, renewable energy supplies has been successful. That's partly because they have interconnection of grids with neighboring countries. This chart is from 2016. This is what actually happened in Germany. Dotted line is load, electrical load. And yellow is power generated by PV. And green, light green is wind generated power. And below that, there is a conventional power system or energy supplied by a conventional power generator. So
태양광이나
balance is
풍력이 출력을 어떻게
differing.
내느냐에 따라서
So depending on the output of wind
우리가
and
가지고 있는
PV,
기저 전원을 줄이거나 늘려가면서
we can
이
reduce
부하를
or
맞춰가는
increase
것입니다.
our underlying
그런데
power to
이거
meet the
지금 독일의
demand.
사례인데
So this
지금
is an
여기서
example of
중요한 부분 중에
Germany.
하나는
And what's important in
이러한
this chart
구조를
is that
변동하는 태양광이나 풍력을 가지고 맞춰가는 과정 중에
in the process of
지금 밑에
meeting
보시면
differing
이렇게 표시되어
demand
있는 이
with wind
부분이
and PV
이웃
power,
나라와의 전력계통 연계에 의해서
at the same time we
보내거나 받는
can
전력의 크기가
exchange and
되겠습니다.
we can interconnect with
그래서
neighboring
우리나라의
grids,
경우에
so we can
만약에
give
독일
and
같은
take
사례로
our power with neighboring
기존에 가지고 있던
countries.
전원들이 이렇게 플렉스블하게
So
운전할 수
in
있다는
Germany,
전제를
they could
가지고
operate
있다
their power
하더라도
system very
지금
flexibly.
보시는 것처럼 수출하고 수입하는
Even
이러한
in
전력에
that
해당하는
case,
부분은 만약
They exported
다른
or
나라와의
imported
전력계통
power
연계가
with neighboring
없다면
countries.
이만큼을
But
더
without
추가로 우리는 더
interconnection
확보를 해야
with
되는
neighboring country in Korea,
그래서,
we need to secure this
정부가
much
지금
power in
원하고
Korea
있는
because we do
그
not have
신재생
interconnection
에너지
at the
보호 확대에
moment,
따른 에너지 전환
unlike
정책을
Germany.
달성을 하려면
So to achieve the
결국 우리
policy
입장에서는
of the new
지금
government
보여드리는
of Korea,
이러한 식의 그 추가적인 밸런싱 파워를
we
확보를
need
해야
to
됩니다.
secure additional
그래서
balancing power, as you can see
만약에
here.
이제 그런 밸런싱 파워를 확보하지 못할
If we
경우에는
cannot secure
지금 보시는
balancing
것처럼
power,
파랗게 표시는 되는
the
양만큼의
blue
파워 커테일먼트를 해야 됩니다.
power
신재생 에너지
curtailment
원부터. 하지만
should
유럽의
power curtailment should
경우에는
be
연계되어 있기
done as
때문에
much as the
이만큼만
blue
이제 커테일을 하면
graph.
된다라고 하는 부분이
But
되겠습니다.
if we do the integration, the curtailment amount will decrease, as you can see in the pink.
지금 그 전력계통 연계를 실현하는 것이
So we are
지금
trying to
정부가
realize
원하고
Asia
있는
Supergrid, and
에너지 전환 정책을 성공적으로 완수할 수 있는
that
아주 좋은
will
수단이 될 수
be
있다.
a very
그렇기
good
때문에 더
tool
이상 우리나라에서
to achieve
소극적으로
new
이러한
government's
그 전력계통 연계에
energy
임할 것이 아니라
transition
더
policy.
적극적으로
So we
임할
need to be very
필요가 있다라고 하는 부분이
aggressive
되겠습니다.
in approaching Asia
아까 이제
Supergrid.
뭐 충분히 언급됐던 사항이니까 간단하게
Actually, this
언급드리면
was mentioned
중국,
sufficiently by
한국,
previous speakers.
그리고 일본
China,
사이의
Japan,
전력계통 연계와
and
관련한
Korea.
preliminary feasibility
Regarding
study는
interconnection
이미 진행이
between
됐었습니다.
these three
그것에
countries,
따라가지고,
preliminary feasibility study
지금
was already
거의
conducted.
뭐 컨센서스를 이룬 부분은 뭐냐면
We almost reached a consensus based on that study.
전류형 HVDC 토폴로지는 조금 뭐 여러 가지 방법이 있을 수 있겠지만
XLPE and
VLC
VLC topologies are a little bit different.
하는 것은 이미 거의 뭐
So
동의되는
we
사항이
reached a
되겠습니다.
consensus on the
그리고
XLPE and VLC
지금
for
만약에
interconnection.
전류형 HVDC로 연계될 경우에 멀티터미널 구조로 갈 수 있는 기술을
So
지금
in that
한전에서도
case,
충분히 지금
multi-terminal
검토를 하고
technology
있었고,
has been
따라서
reviewed by KEPCO
우리
already.
입장에서는
So
지금
in Korea,
중국하고의 2기가와트 규모의 전력계통 연계,
2 gigawatts of interconnection with China and 2 gigawatt interconnection with Japan.
인프라스트럭처를 갖추는 이 상황 하에서 우리
For that
입장에서
end, we need to have a super grid configuration. And on top of that, we can add our proposal into this super grid configuration.
뭐 신재생 에너지원을 하겠다고 하는 제주도의 계획이 있고
Jeju has a
우리나라
plan
입장에서도
to
아까 말씀드린
have
것처럼
the 3
거의 뭐
gigawatts
50기가 이상의
power
신재생 에너지원을
generation.
지금 추가로
And in Korea,
설치를 해야 되는
overall, we need to
상황인데
install 50
그것의
gigawatts
입지를
of power
고려해보면
generation
결국
based on
남해안이나
renewable
해안,
energy.
그리고
And as
제주도에
for
많이
sites,
이제 집중되게 될 것입니다.
the power
그래서
generation
이러한
plants will be
부분을 아까
concentrated in
말씀드린
southern part of
기존의
Korea,
슈퍼그리드
including Jeju
구조하에서
Island.
멀티터미널 구조로 연계를 시킴으로
So
해가지고
multi-terminal technology can be added to Asia Super Grid to enjoy more benefits for Korea.
뭐 여러 가지 기술적 그 배리어가 많이 언급이 됐었습니다.
Technology
하드웨어적으로
barriers have
2기가와트
been
이상의
mentioned
전압형
already.
HVDC 기술을 확보하는 부분. 그다음에
First of all, we need to
500
secure
케이블을 개발하고
HVDC
그에
technology
따라서
for 2 gigawatts or more
이러한
power generation.
그 케이블을
And at the same
바다
time,
밑에 그 심에다
we need to
설치하는 기술, 뭐 이런
install
것들은
the
기술적으로
submarine
당장
cable.
선결돼야 될 문제인 건 틀림없고
So of course, these
그리고
technology
서로
challenges
상이하게
need to
운전되고
address.
있던 뭐 전력계통
And
오퍼레이션이나
on
마켓
top of
같은
that,
그런 곳에서의 그
the
차이
market
부분은
and power system
반드시 이제
operation
그 이전에
methodology are
coordination이 돼야 될
different
겁니다.
between
그런데
different
이런
countries. So
부분들은
we need to coordinate these
조금 전에
differences.
뭐 여러 가지로 언급됐던 다른 여러 가지 장벽에 비하면
But
충분히 빠른
these
시간 내에
technology
해결될 수 있는
barriers, compared with
부분들입니다.
other
기술적인 문제에
political and
의해서
other barriers, can be addressed
슈퍼그리드를
much earlier.
지연시키거나 좀
So
그것에
something
따른
that delays
문제점을
Asia
부각시킬 이유는
Super
전혀 없다고
Grid,
저는 생각이 듭니다.
that kind of
그래서
problems
지금
can be
시간이 다
solved
됐다고 연락이
through
왔네요.
technology.
이것으로
So
제
time is
발표를
up. This
마치도록
concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
네, 장 교수님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Professor Chang. And then next time, for the next presentation, I'm going to introduce you the Special Advisor Bo No-mark from the REI. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's particularly good to speak after the previous speaker because you will see a lot of connections in minds here. First of all, a lot of people have been talking about renewables today and the cost of renewables. I always like to show this slide just to point where are we heading, because if this is the global consumption of energy, you can see where the resources are. I mean, eventually we have abundant resources of solar and wind. I also show this picture sometimes for people to show that there is an overbelief in biomass. Biomass is not as big as some people believe. Solar and wind are the two big ones. So what is happening in Europe? I think that Europe has already decided on 100% renewable, and we are going there very fast. Even in Europe, a lot of people don't realize that for the last 10 years, 70% of all new production built in Europe has been renewable. In the last year, it was 90%. So we are already at the plan where we are building primarily renewable resources. And of course, as you see that there has been a little downturn in the expansion, but it's still going quite fast. Another thing you can see also that we have been, some of the technologies like waste have been almost exhausted already. We are using all the waste we can. That is exhausted in Europe. So we also rely on wind and solar, and not the least wind in Europe. So what's the challenge with this? We have this strong expansion of a variable renewable production. And still, even though we believe we have a European Union, we have a quite uncoordinated expansion of the production. We have a very well-coordinated system for building grids, but not for building production. We still have different incentive systems and tax systems. We have loop flows in the system and unstable prices. And one of the means to solve this is to increase the interconnection capacity. The goal in Europe has for quite a while been to have 10%, minimum 10% interconnection capacity. And you can see that the light blue and the blue, that is countries or areas where we are meeting this requirement. Up in the Nordic countries, we are today well over 30% interconnection capacity. But you see also that in Southern Europe and in West, we are still below 5% interconnection capacity. So what are the cornerstones now in the European energy policy? That is, of course, to continue to develop a fully operational and interconnected union. And that means both in terms of planning and execution, tariffs, everything should eventually harmonize. The goal today is to have 27% renewables by 2030. This goal is under revision. We'll probably end up with 40%. Also to reduce the greenhouse gases by 40% 2030 compared to 1990. Also this goal is under scrutiny and will probably be raised. This previous speaker made a good job in explaining the balance, because we have a variation and uncertainty, and a lot of people are talking about the variation in production. But I will also highlight that in demand we have an increased variation. On one hand, we have more efficient appliances, which means that the minimum load goes down. On the other hand, when we, for instance, electrify the transportation, we will have a higher peak demand. And we have all these elements that we can use. And today we are concentrating on the export-import possibility to balance the variability. Denmark has been highlighted many times. It's one of the most striking examples how Denmark has been able to increase the renewable share by actually sharing with the power with the neighbors. This shows the net flow of power in Denmark versus the production of wind power, which means when the wind power is low, you have a high import, and when the wind power is high, you have a high export. And so Denmark's expansion of wind power is entirely depending on interconnections. ENTSO-E is an organization that is pan-European. It comprises all the TSOs in Europe, and every 2 years they make a 10-year development plan. So I say we have today a very well-coordinated planning of grids in Europe. The current plan calls for 150 billion euros investment in transmission, and you can see also some of the numbers that are quite striking, that the impact on the bill of the consumers in Europe will be minimal. It will be 1 to 2 euros per megawatt hour. That's 1 to 2% only if you make all the plans. Still, we will be able to increase the integration of renewables up to 45, maybe even 60%. We will reduce emissions, and also if you see the bottom number there, the reduction of prices will be higher than the cost increase of transmission tariff. So net effect for the consumer will be that the prices will go down. And also reduction of congestion hours. This is the map of all the plans that are currently in the ENTSO-E plan. And you can see the violet ones that are DC links and the red ones are AC links. And not surprisingly, a lot of activity is going on in the outer boundaries of the union. One question that has been asked already, what does Brexit make to the plans? And the most likely answer is nothing at all, because this is based on, has economical merits. So even if Britain decides to stay outside the union, economical factors will also make, they will continue to interconnect with Europe electrically. Then I saw these examples of plans in Korea here, and so that's why since you have so many projects to choose from in Europe, I chose one that is quite similar to what you're planning here. And this is the so-called INELFE interconnection between France and Spain. Europe has a system which is called projects of common interest, which means that we decide if projects are of common interest for Europe, they can get access to European funding. And the reason that we use this system is that the overall benefits are higher than the individual benefits of the country. This project is aiming at increasing the transmission capacity between France and Spain from 3 gigawatt up to 5 gigawatt. The length of the cable is 370 kilometers, of which 290 is subsea and 90 is underground cables. It's today planned to be 2 times 1 gigawatt, actually 2 gigawatt altogether. And the reasons to do it is the traditional one, security of supply, increased efficiency, economy, integration of renewables. And it's interesting that the total cost here is about 1.7 billion euros, of which European Union will support with 700 million. If you choose, and that's another thing, if you choose to build 1 times 2 gigawatts instead of 2 times 1, the cost will go down by about 1/3. And that's another discussion. So the timetable is also interesting. What you see here, the planning takes as long as the construction. It's about the same time. So the total planning is about the project execution time. It's also interesting to look at the studies, because for all these projects of common interest, it's mandatory to make an exercise to see of the overall economy. And then you're looking at different scenarios. This is called Vision 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 4 has the highest penetration of renewables. And just if you summarize that, you can see that the benefit of an interconnection increases with the penetration of renewables. So, and here is divided into savings in generation, fuel, and operation cost. It's also how much more renewables you can host, reduction of losses, and changes of CO2 emissions. And as you can see in the 4th scenario, Vision 4, all these factors have the highest impact. This is, by the way, something you could use and study, because the methodology for studying projects of common interest is quite well developed and is public. You can see it. It's recently been revised. Then, if you go further, if you look at 2050, there has been a lot of studies made also, and this is an interesting graph that shows the distance and how much capacity you need to increase. The red dots are submarine cables, and the blue ones are actually land cables or land lines. And one interesting thing you can see is 1/3 of all interconnections planned are actually submarine cables, which is quite high compared to the previous. What they also have studied with this long-range 2050 study is, again, the economical impact. And the results are quite stunning. I would say that it looks that the benefits way overweight the cost. So to summarize, if you look at the 10-year plan, I think that one of the things also, I think, was the previous, that all new DC connections now are VSC. That technology is used for all of them. Finally, also, we are, as I said, market integration. We are doing this, but we do it step by step. We take it regional first, and then we go for the European. So we have it as two-step. So the lessons learned are that grid investments are generally very cost-efficient way to improve the electricity system. There are multiple benefits from interconnectors. A common system for economic evaluation is essential. The value of interconnector is higher the more renewables you introduce. And finally, be aware of technology, because this is still a moving target. Thank you.